with me.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is your host, Roxy, with another episode of Rocks with Me, here with another special guest that I'm super excited to have connected with and have given, a space to share what she does, which I think is honestly amazing. I have Miss Jacqueline Ravelo. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
She's on Instagram at Therapy with Jackie.
Yep, that's where you can find me in the Instagram streets.
So you all could slide in her DMs and stuff. First off, you were first like a preschool teacher, right? Like, God bless you for that. Like, I have two boys. So I remember that time. But how long were you a preschool teacher?
So officially, I was like a lead preschool teacher for about 2.5 years in between undergrad and starting graduate school to become a therapist. But I had always worked with kids. Like I was babysitting like siblings, or, I was trying to hustle a little bit and babysit, or I was a camp counselor, or I was like a substitute teacher to try to make some money during college. I would do a lot of different things like that. I worked in an arts camp that was really cool when I was
That's awesome.
in college. It was really, really awesome. But there were a lot of different things like that. But within like a formal preschool system, it was a private school. So it was very different from a lot of the communities that I had been working with. And, it was a system ultimately. And it was that system that made me reconsider teaching and made me want to go into a field that was more focused on activism and affecting change at all the different levels.
That's so awesome. And like when you talk about like working with kids and stuff, I could already tell you have like a passion behind it. Like that was your calling and you're just following through it full force, which is amazing because not a lot of people can deal with children. So for you to have that like that inner flame that lets you and allows you to do it with like the way it should be done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much, and it's really unfortunate, especially teenagers get a very bad reputation and rap because everybody thinks that teenagers are just like snarky and obnoxious and just like very oppositional and things like that. But when we kind of look at all of the struggles and all the things that teenagers are going through today versus, when I was a teenager 20 years ago or so, it's like night and day. Like the stuff that I was going through, I was listening to my emo music. I was worried about who, was going to hit me up on AIM. Like I wasn't really worried about the stuff that the kids that I see today were worried about. So it's like, I think it's very important to speak to your point. Like it's very important that there are people who are passionate about working with teenagers. And it's not just like another, not to be ageist or anything like that, but to have like an older, disaffected person who's working with young people and just doesn't really have the capacity or the ability or the desire to connect with young people in this way.
Yeah, and I love that your work because now you are a therapist aimed primarily for teenagers, right?
Yes.
That is super amazing itself because I still haven't finished college. I'm taking breaks here and there, but I was studying social psych with a minor in criminal justice because I wanted to work with juveniles that were like in the detention centers because sadly, the judicial system kind of doesn't help them rehabilitate and instead kind of molds them into the inmate that they become, unfortunately, certain times. So when I saw like your Instagram page and then the little bio sheet you sent me that you're primarily working with teenagers, I'm like, this is amazing because people think they're teenagers. They're already kind of molded. They already know what's going on. But sadly, it's still like, yeah, they're molded somewhat way, but it's still not dry clay. You could still mold them in a way where when they're a young adult, they make a good positive impact to society.
Absolutely. And by the way, I love that for you, like going and working with juvenile justice. I used to do that. That was like my weekend gig after I got licensed. And I would do suicide assessments actually, because whenever a kid would come there would be kids who would come in like for the weekends. And that's how they would like serve their time at the detention center. So there would be kids, like we had to assess every single kid who would come in and make sure that they were good, that they weren't at risk of anything. And a lot of the kids, we wouldn't see them again because it would be like a one-time thing. They were in the
Yeah.
wrong place in the wrong time. But, the reality was, unfortunately, and not just because we were in Miami, which is a primarily like Latina community and a primarily Black and brown community, but like the population, it was all Black and brown boys who were in there. So, systemically, that's how the system is meant to work, where
Right.
it keeps certain kids marginalized and it keeps them from having access to a lot of things that other kids in different communities have, unfortunately. But let me tell you, I applaud you because that shit was hard work. Oh, can I curse? I think I saw an explicit E on one of your podcasts. So I think if you put the explicit E,
Yes.
it should be good.
Yeah, we're totally good.
Okay, cool. I appreciate you. Thank you. But it's hard work, but you would be so good at it too. I feel like you have
Oh,
that presence to be able to connect with kids in that way. It's important.
definitely. And when I was going to school in San Diego for like a couple years, we did volunteer at the juvenile detention center in that area, like doing like tutoring kind of work with them. And yeah, some are just like wrong place at wrong time, get caught up with the wrong group or any things like that. I've seen it with my own cousins growing up. So it's just like that's always been like a passion of mine that I guess I put on the back burner that I'm still slowly but surely aiming to work towards.
Well, you get there in the time that you get there. Like there were so many people in my program that, excuse me, they were there in their second career. Like there were people in their 50s, there were people in their 60s who had done completely different things. Like I had friends who were like lactation counselors or journalists or like doulas. Like they did a whole mess of stuff. Like there was somebody who was like an attorney and went back to be a social worker. And the beauty of education is that it's like the only thing that nobody can take away from it, is
Yes.
what my, Cuban grandfather would say. Well, all my family's Cuban, but like what my grandfather would say, like post the immigration process, like that's the only thing and nobody could take away. And you can access it in so many different ways. Like I think about him and he was getting into a whole other thing, but like he was born in Pinar del Rio, which is like a farming community in Cuba, very
Okay.
rural. And like he was one of 12 and he only had like a sixth grade education, but like he was so hungry for information and like he loved like reading biographies and stuff like that. So like you can make it happen. I think is the point of what I'm trying to say. Like if you want it, you can make it happen. Yes, there's a lot of systemic things that happen and that are in place. And I'm absolutely 1,000% dedicated to dismantling, but there's ways to be able to make shit work and to make shit happen. So I got off on a whole other tangent, but
No, but it's a good one though. So I don't mind at all. I honestly don't mind at all because you made me think of my paternal grandfather, like
mm,
God rest his soul. I remember a story that my dad told me about him where, because they grew up in Ameca, Jalisco, which is like a little pueblo, like right outside Guadalajara and stuff. And my dad's one of the oldest of like 10. So huge,
yeah,
typical family. And one
yeah.
of his sisters, who's older than him, had wanted to go back to school, but like she was missing that, like, oh, I'm too embarrassed because I'm getting too old and I'm going to be the oldest in the class. And my grandpa told her, like, no, you won't. No, you won't. Just do it. Just do it. And he ended up enrolling in the same class as her so she wouldn't be the oldest.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. Oh my gosh.
So it totally made me think of that story when you were talking about like, it's never too late. And that's something someone like nobody could take from you.
Yeah.
So props to you for earning your master's in social work from New York University, right?
Yeah, it took a minute to get there, but I got there. That shit
That's amazing. That's so amazing. That's showing like, si se puede, guys. Like,
Yes, yes, you can. And especially, I'm going to say it like NYU is like a very white school. And something that I had been, and I'm like super white passing, not so much in New Jersey and New York, but, definitely in Miami and in Florida. But like, the thing I have noticed is that in a lot of these spaces that are predominantly white, like there's a lot of those microaggressions that happen where you are expected to be like the spokesperson for all of Latinidad. And like there would be conversations that we would have during policy classes, or, you know, you have to take classes on like power and privilege and social justice and stuff like that as part of the curriculum. And people, like, whenever immigration would come up, whenever like intergenerational trauma would come up, whenever like machismo or like cultural competency would come up, like all of the people would kind of like, well, like turn their heads and look at me and wait for me to be like, oh, I'm going to educate you now. And it's just like, it's just so frustrating to be in that type of environment. And especially at like great personal expense, because like it was an expensive program that I was investing in, you know, but like that's kind of how it was in a lot of the schools I went to at a lot of different levels. Like when I was in grammar school, we were the only Latina family in the, like, for a long time in the grammar school in northern New Jersey. And then, you know, in college, there were, even though I went to a very like diverse public college in New Jersey, you know, it was also like there were a lot of moments like that, which sucks that, you know, there's so much pressure that's put on us to have to continue to educate other people, which, and it's just, it's an unfortunate thing, and it's an unfortunate dynamic that still continues. I think, you know, if I didn't live where I live now, it would probably happen a lot more often, I think.
And people don't realize that, especially because, you know, we're in 2023, like who thinks of that kind of stuff, that it still happens, but sadly it kind of does in some places, even here in America. Now, did you always think that you were going to work for like with teenagers, or is it something that like throughout the years, you know, working with preschoolers and such, that you had like an epiphany?
You know, it's funny, like my first childhood aspiration was to be the first female Latina president of the United States.
Oh,
Which,
nice.
like I was little and I was like, yeah, I want to make a difference and I want to, you know, do all these amazing things for this country. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if I want that job anymore. It's like a hard ass job, but you know, I had always really enjoyed being creative and working with kids. And so initially I was drawn into this field because, you know, full disclosure, because of my own trauma, because of my own shit. You know, a lot of people who are in the helping professions, a lot of therapists and psychologists, and social workers and counselors and such, you know, we all are working through our own shit in some type of way. And I'm a big believer that we are the sum of our experiences. So initially I wanted to work with like little kids. And I did some cool stuff where I would do this type of play therapy where I would teach parents how to play with their kids. So that way their kids were reducing like their behavior problems, which
Okay.
was super cool.
Yeah.
To be able to help parents create like a nice, close relationship with their kids through play. But you know, the thing that really soured me on it was the parents, to be completely honest. It's very difficult sometimes to work with an adult versus working with a kid. A kid has, like, you see the change happen faster.
Right.
And I never really wanted to work with teenagers, but eventually I started doing more and more things. Like, I started working at DJJ. I eventually ran a program out of Miami where we were working with, you know, 50 kids at any given time. And like, these were all kids who were experiencing severe mental health concerns. They were in danger of like dropping out of school. They were like hanging out of DJJ. There were like substance concerns. There were a lot of things that were happening for these kids, as well as like complicated family dynamics. So, you know, it was at that point that I started working more with teenagers and helping support like our team while working with these teenagers. And eventually, like, I ended up having like my own caseload, even though I was running like a program and stuff. And I really fell, in love with how much capacity a lot of young people have and like how much resilience a lot of kids have that a lot of people don't really recognize and see. Yeah. So it's just, it was I'm a big believer in like supporting, I guess, I don't want to say like the underdog, but like I really do feel like there's a lot of young people who don't have the support that they need. And
Right.
so, I think back to when I was a teenager and when I was in therapy for, a number of different issues and like thinking like, how I wish I had had like a younger person who kind of got it, who
Yeah.
had the empathy and the understanding that I needed, and just to kind of like recognize and see me in a different way. And like after all these experiences, I realized like I really shouldn't be resisting working with teenagers in this way. Like this is something that I really need to do. And I've been working with teenagers ever since. So it's been quite a few years now. I want to say it's been like 5 years that I've been working exclusively with teenagers. I want to
That's
say.
awesome. That's amazing. Kudos to you, honestly, because I'm sure each teenager you've came across is like super unique and different in their own
Yeah.
ways. Like kids, obviously, they're so like their curiosity is still there and stuff. And for you to work with teenagers, it's kind of like I have a preteen right now, 12, going to be
An
13 in
age.
January.
Yeah.
He's in that age where I'm no longer cool. So we've been butting heads, and it's like a struggle to kind of adjust to parenting a teen rather than like a kid. And I still have my 10-year-old who's like, I'm the best person in the world. Like,
Yeah. Who's into the hugs and wants to hang out and do all the fun,
exactly.
watch a movie together.
For sure. So it's I see the difference in my own kids and how much harder it is to try to make that connection with my preteen.
Mm.
So I'm sure like that they see you being their therapist as like also an outlet where they could open up freely rather than talking to their parent about certain things. So I'm pretty sure you do have that like kind of talent, I guess, to give them that safe space to allow them to open up freely.
I do my best. I really do believe that we're always learning and we're always doing better and there's always new things to learn. And I do believe I had this conversation with my own therapist yesterday, actually. Like we learn things from each other, so I think having a different type of power differential with your client, with a younger person, with a teenager, makes a huge difference because kids are so accustomed to adults being the authority figure.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't relax. I can't be myself. I can't I have to be on point over here around these adults because I could get in trouble or because there's going to be some type of repercussions or there's some type of consequence or something like that. But I kind of start my work with all the young people that I work with by being like, look, we are a team. I am not an adult who is going to be managing you or who's going to be telling you what to do. A lot of people think therapy is a therapist telling them what to do. It's not. It's about that relationship and guiding that person to be able to work on the things that are coming up for them and to be able to function in a better way and to be able to change their circumstances in that type of way. It's not about me telling anybody what to do. That's something that I find puts them at ease a lot. And that's something I notice with a lot of parents is like a lot of parents will kind of come and be like, so what did they say? Or they'll come to me and they'll be like, oh, can you please just talk to, Miguelito about XYZ? Can you talk to her about this? Because this is what happened the other day. Or I'll get the text messages and I'll be like, I don't hear, I'll see a long message about like, oh, Juanita did this, and this is how it happened, and this is what I did, and I don't know if I did it. So a lot of times it's about like the parents' level of discomfort and the capacity to be able to let go. And there's a lot of like control that kind of goes in that. But like from the get, I'm like, look, I'm not a spy and I'm not a DJ. I don't take requests and I'm not going to spy on your child because ultimately that relationship that we're going to have together is going to benefit your relationship because there are going to be things they're going to not want to tell you, but I'm going to help them gain the confidence to be able to have those conversations. And you want them to have those conversations with you, not like they're being held, hostage or anything like that.
Right.
Like they want them to be able to come to you feeling comfortable and feeling confident and feeling like they are going to not be judged and they are going to be accepted because that conversation is very hard for them. Like a lot of the kids that I work with, like it's really like the anxiety that they experience makes the like build up to an experience or like whatever situation, conversation, whatever may happen, or a test or whatever, so much worse than what actually happens within that experience or test or the conversation or the confrontation, you know? So just
Yeah.
kind of like being able to help walk them through that, I think really helps put the kids at ease and feel like, okay, you know, I can be myself, I could be honest, and I could be real with this person.
And do you find it like being beneficial when the parents themselves also go to therapy?
I think so. Like 1,000%. You could kind of tell a difference between like who's kind of done some work on themselves
Mm-hmm.
is like people who might benefit from some introspection and self-awareness, you know, like no judgment or anything like that, not by any means, but I really do believe that some parents, it's not an issue with their kid that's happening. It might be an issue within themselves that is manifesting because, you know, especially within our community of like, you know, Latina families, like it really depends in terms of help seeking, but like there are a lot of moments where I would see people, not so much anymore, but definitely when I was working in agency work, I would see people who would kind of be like, you know, fix my kid. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
there's a problem con la niña and you
Mm-hmm.
need to fix it porque usted es la profesional. You know, like
Yeah.
you're the professional and you need to come in here and like wave your magic wand and fix my kid because this is not okay. And, you know, like this needs to be resolved. This is not working for me. But the thing that is really discounted is that a lot of those parents have a trauma history within, you know, their own background, within their own childhood, or they've experienced, you know, adverse childhood events and things like that. But they don't have the understanding or the insight to realize, like, oh, okay, this shows up within my kid. You know,
Right.
I was going to say I was reading something really interesting, but that would be a lie. I saw it on Instagram.
If you read the caption accounts,
Being
you read
honest,
it.
being honest. So there was this thing on Instagram, but I saw this and I was like really like this kind of blew my mind. So if you are born female, and you have your mother and your grandmother, you were in your grandmother at one point. Like when your grandmother was pregnant
Mm,
with your mother,
right.
your mother already had her eggs and you became one of those eggs. So that's 3 generations of people. I'm not saying as like articulately as or as beautifully as the person on Instagram said it, but you know, like there's 3 generations that
Right.
are right there in that one moment of time.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible to see like how lineages can be changed with
Mm,
like a small moment because we carry all of these things. We carry the experiences of our ancestors. We carry the experiences of like immigration, of coming to this country, of before, of colonization, of all these things. These things are within us and our
mm-hmm.
body remember all of these things. So it's really incredible to see. Sometimes people just don't have that level of understanding, but that's why it's so important to give that information, that education, and to be able to break it down in a way that's like not stigmatizing and that, you know, like people can understand like we're all connected in this type of way.
You wording it like that, like paraphrasing what you saw on Instagram, like that's just like mind blowing to think of. Like I guess I never really put thought into it. Sure, like, yeah, we're like healing, you know, intergenerational trauma and all such, and, you know, starting like, I don't know if like being woke is the right term, where you're like seeing like this is where it ends with me type of mentality. And but when you put it like that, where it's like, yeah, you were like, I have that part of like my grandma when my mom was, it's just, I'm like flabbergasted. I'm whoa. I've
No, isn't
never
that shit
realized
wild? Like I
a
saw
wild thing to think of. Yeah.
this is a really beautiful, like they have like these little animations and cositas and stuff like that. And but it's just, it's really incredible to think about it in that type of way. But thinking about it and framing it like that really makes you understand what the importance of like
Yes.
us, being connected with our bodies, being able to, move through the emotions and, all of the things that we go through daily, and to be able to, do that self work. It makes it all the more important because by us being able to focus on ourselves in this type of way and to radically care for ourselves, like we are changing the future. So like all of the people in the future, all of our, progeny and, like all of those people will be all the better for us doing the work on us now.
That's like beautifully put into words on how like impactful someone's life can be for like future generations and stuff, which is amazing. And I say it on every episode, like how remarkable we are, how resilient we are, how like you need to remind yourself how proud you are and such. And I want to give you also the space to show off, like without being humble, how resilient and remarkable you are. So, what is there a story that sticks out to you where at the moment you probably didn't realize how strong you were, but looking back, you're like, damn, I went through that and I'm still here. Look at me being badass.
I'm not trying to be like whatever, but it's kind of hard to like pick one, to be honest with you. I feel like, a lot of my childhood was like struggle, and it's taken a long time to be able to get to the place where I am today as an adult, to be able to feel some level of being like self-possessed and confident and like self-assured and regulated, like to have my nervous system in a place where it feels good. But like, I think that the biggest, most formative experience that really like taught me about, resiliency and how resilient I could be was actually like my parents' divorce. Like when we were growing up, there was a lot of discord, I think is how I'm going to say it.
Mhm.
And I would, when I was working with DCF, I would kind of like joke with my parents, joking, not joking, and be like, we should have been removed from you because you're a mess. Like you were having a hard time. And, I'm very grateful that both of my parents have done the introspection and like have really worked on themselves a lot over the course of these past, I guess I have to do the math real quick, like 25 years or so. But when I was a kid, like we had this like pretty comfortable lifestyle. Like I would say we were like upper middle class. And then, we went to being in poverty and we had never experienced that before. My parents had because they had emigrated to the United States and, really struggled. But we were kind of living that experience. And like there would be so many moments where, like our lights would be turned off, or like we wouldn't have like heat, or we would have to like boil water in order to be able to like take a bath and do different things like that. And just kind of being in the midst of a very chaotic, very high conflict divorce was something that was incredibly dysregulating. And so like the safety that I had was school. So school was like the only place where I could really thrive. I
Mhm.
wasn't thriving so much socially. I was a very lonely kid. I didn't really have a lot of friends or anything like that. And like there was a lot of bullying and stuff. There were a lot of shitty kids in my school. And there's some kids who just suck. I'm
Right.
just gonna say it.
Yeah, it's true.
But and granted, they might suck or they might present outwardly like really shitty because of stuff that they're going through, which I
Right.
understand. But it's just I think it was a personality thing, like my personality. I guess very mercurial, like very curious type of kid, and it just didn't mix with the other kids that were there, and then there were also like the cultural dynamics and stuff like that. But like there were many times where because of the social isolation, because of the chaos at home, because of like the toxicity and the discord, where my mental health, even as a preteen, suffered really significantly. And, like I look back and I think like, wow, that was something that I was able to really, I survived that. And I was able to keep on focusing on what the end goal was. And the end goal was eventually to go to high school and then to go to study in college. And like at that time I wanted to be an attorney because that was going to set me up to be the first female president.
Right.
But to be like that was my goal, to be able to get out of that situation and to be able to be independent and be autonomous and be able to have like my own thing where I wasn't dependent on anybody else. Like that was something that was always, it was the education that was drilled into us, but also with the changing of the family was like, you need to be independent. Like you
Hmm.
can't rely on a man. You cannot rely on anybody else. Like it's you. Like you need to take care of yourself. Granted, this is something that I've unpacked a lot throughout the years at therapy and being able to like accept help and being able to
Yeah.
have a partnership and to be able to have like a loving relationship where I can just let somebody take care of me, and that's shit that's come out like as I've been an adult. But like looking back at that moment, I think like that was one of the moments where I felt like most resilient. And of course, over the years, like especially with COVID, like my mental health really suffered a lot in COVID. And, I know I'm not alone there. I know a lot of the young people that I worked with or I have worked with, over the course of the past couple of years, like they were hit super hard. And I realized then like I'm an anxious person. Like not only am I an anxious person, but there's a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that I haven't really worked on,
Mm.
so that was kind of like this resurgence of all that stuff that I had experienced when I was a kid and just kind of going through it again. So going through it in like my mid 30s, well, it was more early 30s. In my early 30s was something that was like a completely disorienting and just like very different experience because I thought I was over that shit. Like I was like, no, I
Right.
went to therapy for that. I'm good,
Yeah.
Then, having that like social isolation happen again was something that was like really, really unsettling for my nervous system. And, like I've been working on me for a minute because honestly, like you can't help other people unless you work on you. Like you just can't. And
Yeah.
I know that there's some therapists out there who are like, oh, I don't need therapy. And I kind of look at them a little bit sideways. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
You sure about that? Like,
it's something that is a work in progress. And I think that over the course of the past, few years, thank goodness, like things have kind of leveled out and I've been able to gain the skills to be able to make sure that I'm regulated and I'm good so I can help other people in this type of way. But let me tell you, that shit is hard. Like when you think that you're good and then like the rug gets pulled out underneath you and you're like, oh, no, just kidding. Like you're not.
and you don't realize it until something happens that's triggering that like brings up these suppressed memories or feelings that you thought you've dealt with and healed. But I commend you for being vulnerable and realizing it, like that self-realization is something huge that a lot of people don't understand, that they really need to recognize that there's always room for improvement. There's always room for healing. They just need to take that first courageous step in like seeing it in order to take that next step of like, okay, let me do some healing. And inner child healing is not easy. So,
Oh no. Mm-mm.
so kudos
Nope.
to you for that. Like for you to work through that, especially during COVID, is like, that's badass. I'm just going to say.
I appreciate that so much. I appreciate you because like let me tell you that shit was very hard when it was happening. But like you get creative with it. And I think like something that I've recently started kind of doing is as things have become more social and more relaxed and that type of stuff. And Florida is like the Wild West. They can do whatever out here. But my husband and I, we started going to concerts. Back in the day, I was very into emo bands. And
Okay.
so, like, we saw that there were two emo artists that were going on tour together. And so, like, I dragged him over. Got like an emo t-shirt that I had, like all this stuff. And we went to see this concert. And it was something that was incredibly like restorative and incredibly healing for 15-year-old me. And I think the beauty of like doing that inner child work and being able to reconnect with your inner teenager or, your inner 7-year-old or whatever part of you or era of you needs that support and being held in that type of way is like you can do it in so many different ways. It's not just journaling and meditating and imagining like 7-year-old you and giving her a hug. It doesn't have to be like that because meditation is not for everybody. Like I know it's an
Right.
unpopular therapist opinion, but it's not because sometimes, if you are a person whose nervous system is very dysregulated, it's going to be impossible for you. Especially if you have like a lot of flooding or like intrusive thoughts and things like that. Meditation is not going to work for you, boo. Like it's not going to work for you in that moment, but you can do other things to be able to regulate yourself in that type of way. So like the way that I did was I've been going to concerts and I've been listening to that music and I've been, enjoying that. Like our next concert is Sugar Ray, which
That's
is,
cool.
I know that was way back. That was I think that's like a 12-year-old version of me, a 13-year-old version of me, but we're going to go see Sugar Ray like at Disney. So I'm super excited about that. But, it's accessible to you. It's
Mhm.
accessible to everybody. Like you can find something that feels good for you and that honors that inner child, that inner teenager, and the way that they're able to feel seen and appreciated and loved.
I completely agree with that. Now, for parents out there, like I know you specialize with the therapy for teens that are whose parents are going through divorce. When exactly would be a good time for like parents to put their kids into therapy? Or are there signs that parents have to look out for, be like to take that to think of taking that step? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I really do believe that parents are like the experts on their kids. They know their
Mhm.
kids incredibly well. But like the one thing that I typically see that leads to everything else is not necessarily like the change of the family that's happening. Because sometimes, parents have been growing apart for a period of time. Like maybe they've already been living like different lives. A lot of things could have been happening. But the one thing that I typically see that happens very, very often is that people are starting to notice problems at school. So it could be social problems or it could be academic problems. Because school is one of the few areas where kids have complete control. They don't have control over the teachers, but they have control of how they show up. So if they go into school and if they start getting like discipline referrals, or if they go into school and they start skipping, or if they're, falling asleep during class, or if they start, having issues with peers, with friends, with that type of stuff, like having issues with teachers when they never had issues with teachers, like that's usually a clue that something is going on. And also just having an honest conversation with your kid and being like, look, this is something that we want to offer you. How would you feel about seeing somebody that's not us that you can talk with, and that your conversations are going to be private, and just kind of really drilling that into and like saying like this is going to be for you. This is not going to be like for us to keep an eye on you. This is an
Right.
outlet, and usually a lot of kids are very appreciative of that. And they're like, oh, thank goodness. Like I really wanted something. I wanted like an additional outlet, or I wanted a neutral person. That's not the two of you because I'm frustrated with you two of you, whatever type of way, So being very proactive about it and just kind of like noticing and offering is an approach that I found has really, really helpful.
And I do like that approach of letting them know that this is more for them, the child, and not for the parent,
Yep.
and respecting that boundary set that this is like whatever happens is privacy. Because, like you mentioned, there's going to be parents that are like, so what did what happened? Like,
Yep.
what was that?
It happens all the time. It really does. And I get the urge, like I get the urge that the parents are like, I just want to make sure everything's okay. But, it's an opportunity and it's an exercise in letting go, because you're not going to be able to control everything that happens out in the world with your child. You're
Yeah.
not. Like, it's just the reality. You only can trust that you have done your best and you have instilled in your child the information they need to know in order to be able to navigate. And
Yeah. That's a very powerful statement right there. Trusting in your own parenting that you've instilled those morals, that their moral compass will end up being aligned to the good and not stray them away. Again, it's something scary, just like, letting them go and, messing up on their own and picking themselves up. But obviously, as a parent, you just want the best for them. And it's frustrating not knowing what is the right way to parent. So I'm sure like having the child have that outlet in a therapist, especially with someone that they're able to connect with and trust, because I've done my own therapy where like I honestly like went to one therapist, one session, no thank you, went to another therapist, oh no thank you, and
Yep.
stuff. And it wasn't until like, because how was I going to be able to do the work if I didn't trust the person who I'm speaking to? I already knew like, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to be open and honest with this person. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And so like when parents put their children to have to have therapy, what's one thing you would suggest for them to ask their child to make sure it's a great fit for the child themselves?
I don't know if I would suggest anything like a particular question to ask, but I think that they're going to know whether or not it's a good fit or not. Like if they notice that their kid is feeling at ease when they're going there, or their kid's excited to go see the therapist and to go talk to the therapist, then that's a good sign that this person might be a good fit for your kid. Of course, do your homework because, like you said, not everybody is for you. Like, not everybody's going to be a good fit. And to be completely honest, like you could have somebody with all of these credentials, all of these certifications from the fanciest school, from all that stuff. But like, if they don't understand you and if they don't connect with you, like that doesn't mean shit. Like it really
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't. It's just like a person with some fancy certificates and things like that, but they're not going to understand you. And you're not going to feel like they can help you and that you can get through this issue with them. So, looking for the fit beyond anything else is like the number one most important thing I would recommend to do. Like, just kind of see how they vibe with your kid and see how you vibe with them. How is the therapist talking to you? Are they
Mhm.
being very upfront with you? Are they being transparent with you? Are they going over all their policies with you? Are they explaining how confidentiality works? What is protected, what is not?
Which is
Like,
probably the hugest thing there.
100%. With teenagers, confidentiality is like number one. That is like the first question everybody always asks me, whether it be to the parents, which is so funny because like, but it means everybody's concerned about that. They
Right.
be able to have that type of relationship and trust.
Hmm.
Like I appreciate that they ask that because then, I have an opportunity to be able to give the information and say like, okay, this is how it's going to work.
And you have your own private practice, right?
Yes, I do. So right now I'm working virtually. Like there's going to be a little bit of a shift, I think, in the next few months where I'm going to be most likely seeing people in person. Like right now I'm seeing people virtually all over the state of Florida. But I recently moved to the Florida Keys. I'm most likely going to be opening up an office in the Keys. So that's going to be a nice shift to move
That's
back.
gonna be awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
That's super exciting. That's a huge accomplishment. Like that's awesome. When you do open up your own office for, your private practice, would you still continue virtual clients if obviously they prefer it, or just strictly in person?
Oh, totally. Like I see people who are like all over Florida right now. So it's just a necessity. But there is something where when you're in person, it just kind of hits different. There's this one particular type of therapy that I do that's called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I've done it myself as a client, and I found like that it's possibly the most helpful and effective intervention for trauma work. And doing that in person feels completely different than when you do it virtually. So, just thinking about that and the experience that my clients have, like I feel like it would be better to do that type of work, like that deep trauma work in person. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards that direction. But I'm excited. I'm really excited to be able to offer it in person, in the next few months.
That's gonna be amazing. Now I'm like
Tell me.
not confused, but I just don't. I guess I don't understand how like therapists and their licensing works. Are you someone, since your location is Florida? Are you someone that could only practice in Florida, or you could do like anywhere?
So the way it works right now, which things are in flux, things are kind of changing. There's this new law that is in the works of being passed. It's called the Counseling Compact, and Florida is one of the states that has signed on to it. So basically, the short version of it is if you are practicing and licensed in one of the states that's part of the Counseling Compact, you can see clients in other states. So at one point I was thinking like I'm gonna get licensed in my like home New Jersey, or I'm gonna get licensed in New York where my husband's from, and kind of do that. New York is a little finicky with their licensure. You have to be licensed for like 10 years. I've been licensed for 7. It's a whole thing. But right now, as it stands, like pre-counseling compact and that law is you can only practice in the state where you are licensed. That's kind of like what my license protects me
Mm-hmm.
in. But like when you have your license to be able to practice therapy, like you are licensed to be able to practice independently of somebody else. So like something that I used to do is I would like supervise people for their license to get their license because you need to be supervised for so many hours. I think in the state of Florida, it's like 2,200 hours or something like that over the course of 2 years. Like you have to like really do a lot of stuff in order to become a therapist, which is good, you know. Like
Right.
some people are out here reckless on on the internet calling themselves, all sorts of things, which I'm not even going to get into it. It's a controversial topic, but like I I'm very proud to be a licensed clinical social worker and to be a therapist, and I protect that license, so I want to act within accordance of the law. On the other hand, I do recognize and understand that these laws are very gatekeepy. They are rooted in bureaucracy. Like I have a colleague who was telling me she's trying to get licensed in Minnesota, and they want her to do her hours, like her intern hours,
All
all
over again.
over again.
Oh my.
And my friend is like, she's been licensed. Like there's
Right.
no reasons. She took her test, she saw her people, she paid her money, she already did that, and they want her to do that stuff all over again. So it's just like it's bullshit. Like a lot of these laws are meant to keep people of color out of this field. I feel like to keep people who are, underrepresented out of this field because the work that we do is very transformational and because it's very, very important work.
Mm-hmm.
That's my 2 cents. I'm very like anti the system in that type of way, but I do recognize and understand that the system, some things in the system are in place for certain reasons, and it's for
Right.
protection, my education in that
Mm-hmm.
type of way. So it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship I have with
But again, you speak on these items and on these like topics and like with such passion where it's just like you know your stuff, you know what you're talking about. And you're right. The reason I asked, it's just like sometimes like in certain places, face-to-face therapy may not work because of the therapist in that location, you know?
yeah.
Obviously not all, I'm not generalizing it to everywhere. It's just there's certain locations and it's just you want the best, obviously. And if you're doing your homework, like you mentioned, it could end up being someone that's not even local that you need to reach out to and try to get that work done with. Another thing you have is the Unlearning Collective Group program, Restore and Reclaim.
So I have been working with 2 of my colleagues, and they're amazing. They're Mal Beckett and Caitlin Sienthaler, and we met like doing a group coaching program for therapists and stuff, and we just hit it off. And we're all very much about dismantling the systems and being able to connect therapists with like a different way of life and reality in essence. Like a lot of times in graduate school, a lot of therapists are taught like you have to be a martyr, which is super messed up. And
Right.
that's not like a really sustainable way to live your life. But unfortunately, these graduate schools are very focused on like suffering and sacrifice, and you have to help everybody. And if you don't help everybody, you're a bad person. if you are not doing this, or they say things like, you're not doing this for the money. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but we live in a capitalist system. We need to be able to pay for our food and shelter. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have a universal income. We don't have these things happening. So like we need to be able to sustain ourselves, and to be able to afford our own mental health care and our own health care,
Hmm.
like let's be real. So we kind of put our heads together and we identified this need and we were like, you know what, like we really passionate about is being able to help people dismantle all of that bullshit, and to be able to give themselves the radical self-care and to be able to divest from the, Eurocentric mental health care narrative. So like we decided we have a podcast as well. So we have our Instagram account at the_unlearning_collective. We have a podcast that we talk about fun stuff like Love is Blind, which Love is Blind season 5 is coming soon. Very excited about that. But
Me
we also
too.
talk about, oh my gosh, I can't wait. Oh my goodness. We're gonna
It's
have to
one of
do,
those things where you can't stop watching.
let me tell you, they've been doing us dirty by the slow drip of the episodes that they did last
Yeah.
season. And they're doing it again, I saw already. Like, not okay. I needed to go back to season 1 where they had all the episodes out and then the finale, like I get it. It had to be a cliffhanger, but anyway, I'm off on a whole other thing. So we talk about like fun stuff like that. Like we've done episodes on like narcissistic relationships and stuff like that. With one particular celebrity, we talked about a lot of different things like that. And in addition to having that socio-political lens. So we're most recently, our next big effort and offering is we've decided this program, Restore and Reclaim, which is specifically for therapists who want to rediscover their passion for the field and reject the suffering and sacrifice and build a career that they really, really love. So we're excited about that because we met in a group program and because we found like there's really a need for community within like-minded therapists who are feeling burnt out and want to have better boundaries with their work and really want to do work that they love. So as you can tell, I'm super excited about it. I cannot wait for us to do this. And it's actually coming in October. So, perfect timing.
That's awesome. And it's funny because it's not only like, I feel like in every career, like you find yourself kind of like that light that you once had and like, oh my God, I love my job. It kind of starts like dimming and dimming. So
Yeah.
this is definitely amazing, especially for like the field of therapy itself, where it has such an impact to our society. Like I commend you all for like thinking of this and thinking like, okay, we really need to do this. It's going to be so beneficial for not only you guys, but like future, patients that you guys take on and stuff. So that's amazing.
We're super excited about it. We can't wait. Like this has been a long time coming. We've actually been working on this for like, I'd say almost a year. We've been
Oh,
working.
wow.
So we're really amped. We're really excited.
It's going to be like, I could already feel it. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so successful. And it's probably something you guys are going to have to be doing like every year, every couple of years or something, bring on new people and just thinking about the networking you're going to do. Like, I'm excited for you.
Ew. Oh my gosh. Community is everything,
Yes.
and we live in a society that is incredibly isolationist and very siloed and like, go do your own thing, like be on your own. And we're not like that. Humans are like social creatures and like we have to be in community. So like, the thing about being a therapist, I think it's very isolating, like you're kind of
Mhm.
out on your own doing your own thing and having people around you that like fall in the same area like ethically and like are trying to accomplish the same things and just like do a good job and help people is a really beautiful thing. And unfortunately there's, like you said, there's not a lot of spaces for that, so we're just happy that we're able to create that space for other people and we're just really excited to help other therapists in this way.
That's going to be awesome. Now, is this going to be like virtually done or something in person?
So we're actually like all over the place. Like Mal was in Guam, but is now in Wisconsin. Caitlin is in Virginia and I'm in Florida. So like we're kind of hosting it kind of virtually because we can't unfortunately in person. But yeah, we're still, I when we met, we were also in like a virtual type program and we were able to connect in a way I think that like not a lot of people connect in that. Like I think the last time I felt that level of connection was like when I was in school. You know,
Hmm.
'cause when you're in school, it's so easy to make friends,
Yeah,
like so easy to be able to build those types of relationships. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited.
that's going to be awesome. And then it starts virtually, and then you guys do like a national tour where you guys visit different places and do it personally.
Totally should. I need to tell them that. We were thinking maybe of doing like a retreat. Like we started talking about it and then we stopped talking about it because we all got busy. But like a national tour would be awesome. I have to tell them that idea. Thank you so much.
Yeah, like that would be amazing. And spreading out like all about community, like you mentioned. But I appreciate your time with me. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you just wanted to say to the listeners?
No, I think, we really covered a lot of ground. We talked about all sorts of cool stuff. We talked about marriage, we talked about our histories, we talked about community, we talked about all the cool shit we're doing, like podcast, we talked about all Love is Blind made an
Yeah,
appearance. Like,
it did.
I'm just so grateful that we were able to connect and thank you so much for having me. It's been an amazing time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And so with this new podcast, I'm trying every episode to kind of like suggest a song for people to like listen to, and I'm building my own little Spotify playlist. So is there that like one song you like, it gets you in a good mood, it gets you pumped, that you want to suggest to the listeners, and I'll add it to the Spotify playlist?
Oh my gosh, I love it. So the song that came up immediately for me is what I think is my personal theme song, which is Fat Bottom Girls by Queen. And I think like that song always gets me very like amped and ready to put on like my heels and just like strut and just kick ass. Like it's just one of those songs that gets me super amped and excited.
I
Aside from
love
like
it.
course, but like, it's a classic.
There
So
you go. Go check it out. It's going to be added to the Rocks With Me, the playlist on Spotify.
awesome.
Slowly building that playlist. But that's amazing. Thank you so much again for like giving me this opportunity and like connecting with you and giving our listeners an opportunity to like hear what you do, hear the, the approach they should take with their children, like the signs they should be looking for and all that good stuff. So I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate you. And for everybody listening, thank you for rocking with me in another episode. And if you haven't heard it today, a reminder, you are amazing, you are remarkable, and I am proud of you. Bye.